In the year 2003, Genki dropped another installment to the Tokyo Xtreme Racer series for the PlayStation 2. Unfortunately, this is one of those Genki titles with publishing hiccups, resulting in the absence of the game for Europe and several translation issues. Being built from the ground up for the PS2 does have its benefits, with a much higher graphical quality by comparison to its predecessor, alongside the capability to expand the Highway Crusade further. With 2 new maps, fully licensed cars, a whole slew of reworks for its handling, AI difficulty, more customizations, way too many rivals, and the addition of a story. Sort of. But it is a great way to introduce the game and its ruthless highway street racing scene, especially for newcomers to the series, with each area providing extra context employing the use of cutscenes, as the 13 devils who rule the Tokyo highways are challenged by other street racing crews trying to become the next big hotshot, and the introduction of new gangs and racers from both Osaka and Nagoya. Among this wave of newcomers is you, the player. As with the cutscenes, this game got that early 2000s era theme on point. The menu and UI may seem a bit simplistic, but it serves its purpose well enough, and the music is quite good. The game itself doesn't really have any sorts of tutorial. From the starting point of the career, it's immediately off to pick a Starica with a selection of low to mid-powered cars at our disposal. Now I know some of you might be pumped up to race the hell out of your car, especially with the addition of more customization features, but I wouldn't really recommend spending any leftovers on them for now. The career itself is separated into 2 large stages, with the first half utilized to help players accommodate to the game's handling, the AI opponents, and even some quirky mechanics this game has to offer. In this current stage, the ability to jump between areas is locked out.
Right there, criminal scum.
All areas will need to be cleared before entering the next stage. In usual TXR fashion, progression comes down to beating everyone after blinding them, of course, before returning to the garage after beating opponents to cash in and confirm any upgrades and car unlocks. Defeat every member of a crew and their leader will challenge you to a race. Beat enough crew leaders and the boss of the stage will spawn as well. Although it's not as simple either. Certain regular crew members have finally learned about the headlight option and will retaliate with their own flashbang. Although since the player is technically a solo wanderer, you have the option to reject their advances by pressing the headlight button when the option is available. The bosses range from the 13 devils in Tokyo, whole crews for both Osaka and Nagoya's first stage with Seeks, a gang of high-skilled tuners, Genesis R, a team full of doctors, politicians, and attorneys rolling in with their luxury sedans, and No Losers, a team of glory or nothing nut jobs all driving military-looking Evos. And this is where things get unique, as we have the usual boss fights which will usually go down as a 1v1 race, especially with the 13 devil bosses. But then we have the other 2 area bosses. Seeks and Genesis R behave like regular crew battles at first, until the finale kicks in, as both leaders will team up just to take you down. These kinds of races look exciting at first, until one of the opponents just gives up. It's a bit of an issue where 2 paired opponents are not exactly close to each other performance-wise, so in the end it ends up becoming a 1v1 race again. As for No Losers, the game requires the last 3 members to be beaten in a row. Your SP carries over, and no, you don't get to just continue from the last guy after a loss. All 3 must be beaten in a row, so back to the first guy again if you lose. It's brutal, but it's properly implemented for only specific boss races. The game might not be as hard as TXR2 or 0, but that doesn't mean it's not challenging. Especially once we start getting into engine, turbo, and tire management. Similar to the iteration and import tuner challenge, engine management plays a significant role as a way of challenging players during a session. The more you race in a row, the higher its temperature becomes, resulting in lower performance. You can usually reset the heat back by either leaving back to the garage or jumping into the pit areas. While the former is useful if you want to call it a day, cash in, and potentially upgrade your ride, the latter is super useful to keep the night going, as the pits have several unique mechanics in this game, despite it not having the parked rivals like in Import Tuner Challenge. Aside from resetting the engine temperature, it also immediately spawns a rival rival that hasn't been beaten yet right outside of the exit, which is also useful if said unchallenged rival is way too far from where a race just ended. Some wanderers may ambush you as well when you exit the pit area. Now for the turbo, this can only be toggled if you're running a car with turbo engines obviously. By pressing the select button while in a race, one of the lights on your HUD will turn red, boosting the car's acceleration and top speed at the cost of a spike in engine temperature, thus making this a very interesting game of risk and reward, especially with some of the later boss battles. For the tires, there is no indication of its wear, you just kinda have to feel it. Each area also provides different challenges to tackle for the first stage, with Osaka and Nagoya having mostly straights benefiting top speed setups and Tokyo having more turns and corners to tackle. Whichever area you pick, just be sure to tune the cars as necessary and get used to the roads. Luckily, the early crews are easy enough to handle. As per usual though, they can't cope well with the corners and will either slow down a lot or crash very hard, both of which are beneficial for the player and open up chances to overtake them. If luck is not on your side, then perhaps it's time to look for alternatives. Well, first off, you probably unlock some options from beating several crews, but did you know you get even more stuff unlocked from the elusive Wanderers? For those who are new to the series, Wanderers are special independent racers not tied by any crews. They function primarily as hidden opponents or side bosses in the TXR series. In this title, they function as a direct way to unlock more content, mostly regarding cars and upgrade parts. Although to challenge them, there are certain criteria to meet first, ranging from simple things such as challenging them during certain days, weather, or using a certain car, but as per usual in TXR titles, things can get a bit goofy. Now as for the performance upgrades, their implementation isn't exactly complex. You won't see some big brain stuff like in Drift 2 with all the combos. It's just the basic level based upgrades here. So higher number means higher performance, separated into several categories from power, powertrain, tires, body, aero, and extra visuals with the dress up option. There's also options to manually fine tune your highway machine, unlocked after purchasing non-stock parts for transmission, clutch, suspension, and brakes. There are some noticeable options such as engine swaps, which unfortunately are locked behind a lot of mileage, which is kind of weird since a lot of features here are locked behind regular progression or wanderers. My guess is this feature is intended for helping out players once they get stuck with the final bosses of stage 2, since those guys have some of the most questionable acceleration and top speed. But the way they implemented it is certainly very flawed. I mean, what are they expecting players to do until they reach 1,000 on the odometer? Once you unlock the feature, you can swap between stock, NA, or turbo engines, at a price of course. Interestingly enough, you can pretty much install any type of engine here, from inlines to even rotary engines on non-Mazdas. But we all know what anyone would do with this kind of power. Now about the visual customization options, everything under aero and dress up falls under this category, with body kits being what you'd expect plus some options such as a grille, fender extensions, and a twist to the idea via material options, from the regular material, painted carbon, or just pure carbon, each dictating the weight of the car, and even the highest level of weight reduction will turn the whole chassis into pure carbon. But dress up is where all the visual things are. This is where you get to play around with colors, from basic color changes, sticker sets, and body paints, which is this game's livery editor. Although this livery editor is quite unique as it uses the old drawn textures method of livery editing, which is extremely finicky and time consuming. If you did set a sticker in the set sticker option previously, they can be applied here as well. This is going to be useful for certain wanderers as some of them actually have requirements with certain crew stickers being installed on the car. Stickers are earned by beating opponents or crews, and once installed will give you set sticker icon as your identity on the top left. Other options in dress up include changing both headlight and taillight, where you can change the design, cover, and even change the light color for some insane visual mixes, and to the very niche options of blinker colors, horn sounds, license plate installations, and gauge HUDs. Either way, this game offers some of the most extreme side of visual customization, providing a ton of options for players to toy around with and make their highway machine into something truly their own. And it gets even better. With a total of 115 cars, containing low-powered Japanese underdogs and high-performance JDMs, but this time they are also accompanied by some of the Western rockets from Ford GTs, Dodge Vipers, Gambala-tuned Porsches, the nimble Lotus, and the fancy-looking Mercedes-Benz. They even have some of the more out-of-the-field options such as the Isuzu SUV, the Volkswagen Beetle, and a whole ton of small lightweight cars. Though if you don't want the hassle of building cars from scratch, the option to purchase both special and boss cars are available at the cost of having no flexibility to upgrade them. Unfortunately, Honda is missing from the roster as they only made an appearance in the Drift series ever since Genki started using official licenses for their games. So unlike TXR 1, 2, 0 or the Drift spin-offs, there are no NSXs, Civics, and worse, no CRX. As previously mentioned, you only have several options at the start of the game. Unlocking the rest of the roster requires a mix between progressing, which devolves into beating crews, or for a more specific target, you're gonna have to deal with Wanderers. Unfortunately, due to the way the game's economy worked here, this game can be quite a grind and too limited in giving players freedom with their car choices. With this and the performance upgrade prices, it's very hard to have multiple set of cars, which will probably result in you using 1 or 2 cars for the entire game. The regular rivals drop way too little cash as well, especially in mid to late game. The occasional oasis in this monetary drought would come with certain wanderers and bosses with their bonus cash rewards for completion, but even then it's still not enough. So I had to make a loan with the Tojo clan just so I can toy around with as many cars as possible for this video. Now you can try to instead learn and get yourself accustomed to the crews you'll be dealing with. As Sun Tzu once said, to defeat your enemies you must become your enemy, or something like that. Crew profiles still contain some of the more goofy and bizarre characters the series is known for. From a group of computer nerds, a team of women-only racers, to the top dogs themselves, the 13 Devils, with a total of 600 individual rivals, including all the bosses and wanderers, and 74 crews. There's bound to be someone who will make you laugh, challenge your skill to its limits, or drag you into a rage quit, especially with the addition of mottos for some extra spice of comedy. It's been 10 years since he ran away from home in defiance against his father. He has been able to get out of debt in which he got into by gambling, but it seems that racing is just something he can't stop. Proper Gumba. He spent all of his times in the pachinko machines. He does have a disagreeable driving habit of getting ahead in straight line situations and blocking beyond what is necessary. It is a great shock for him when children cry upon seeing his face. A believer of female superiority, for 10 men who have been used and discarded by this woman who insists that males are after all consumable things.
Out of this house! Out of this house!
Sadly though, unlike the PSP spin-off Street Supremacy, there is no crew building, so you're running this war as a solo wanderer. Now as for the wanderers themselves, as tradition of course, their criteria can range from the basic day or car requirement, but can go to the absurd levels of having to win a record in the time attack mode, or the ones that only show up according to the game's clock, which I believe is based on the console's clock. These wanderers also come in different difficulties as expected, with a lot of them being quite easy and the rest becoming some of the more dangerous opponents you'll come across on the streets, assuming you can find them and fulfill their criteria, that is. Because unfortunately, the localization is a little bit butchered with the Wanderer criteria. One of the changes done for the localized version was the currency. For some odd reason, whoever was responsible for localizing decided to add a couple extra zeros for the game's economy. There are 2 Wanderers in this game which have financial requirements. These are both Exotic Butterfly and Whirlwind Fanfare. Exotic Butterfly has no problems despite the number changes, so I'm not delving much into them, but then we get to Whirlwind Fanfare. The requirement, 100 million. The number alone is outrageous, but it's something else that brings the trouble. The game can only allow the player to hold
99,999,999 CP,
making this the only wanderer you can challenge in the whole game. But luckily, as of recent, there has been a patch made that actually fixes this error. It only took 20 years, but better late than never, so you can finally 100% this game if you desire to. Now, the currency problem wasn't the only trouble this game had with its localization. You'll probably notice this game's bizarre translation just from the cutscenes I've shown before. The 13 devils in this game is translated to the 13 ogre generals or 13 military officers, with several returning characters having bizarrely different names such as Traitor Jackknife becoming Betrayal Jackknife. The severely bizarre choice to put white text over white background, and this does bleed into some weird menu translations such as this response option in the pause menu. It's literally just cartoony. Luckily, since the story is not that major to the game, the mistranslation won't do much damage to the whole game. But that is pretty much the extent of this game's translation troubles, so other than the economy change, not much else can be considered as fatal. Though it is kind of funny seeing translations that look like they were regurgitated by an AI. After beating all stage 1 bosses, we're officially in stage 2, and this is where the game truly begins. We're given access to jump between areas, useful in case a certain opponent is too tough to beat in an area, or if you just want to avoid racing in the rain. Now as for the random cars on the highway, they're random and will start to be a problem now at higher speeds, as the game's draw distance can make it seem as if these guys just popped into existence just to specifically screw you over or screw the rival over, especially as even more of the previously locked areas are open for some action, with both Osaka and Nagoya opening the outer highway sections with its more focused straights, and Tokyo opens up to its very famous Wangan speed line alongside Yokohane and Yokohama sections as well. To fill these roads, even more crews, rivals, wanderers, and bosses are dropped into the scene. While Osaka only brings one crew as its boss, similar to the No Losers crew, Nagoya instead brings in 5 bosses: Flame Dragon and his Fiery Viper, Jay the Dentist and his A32, and the 3 Dragons crew with their highly tuned Supras. Similarly to the final 3 members of No Loser, you need to beat the Rook, Bishop, and Knight all in a row, bringing possibly the hardest back-to-back challenge in the whole game. Tokyo brought in the remaining members of 13 Devil, including some former members of old defunct teams of the Zodiac, Pluto, Midnight Rose, and the Red Devil in his Gundam-themed A34. And finally, the Speed King as its final boss, or Jintei or Speed Emperor based on the game's translation. It's time for the ending with some vague and possibly contemplative quotes from the game. And congrats, you've officially finished the campaign of Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3, with the only remaining thing being the missing wanderers to beat. Now you have an option to do New Game Plus with the Keep Garage option. This resets you back to day 1 with all previously owned cars and cash available. Useful if you don't want to cheat with some of the wanderer requirements. Although this game does feature several other modes, you might want to give it a shot for some casual fun, with free run allowing players to explore the map with whatever settings you want, be it weather or even traffic inclusion. And then there's time trials for those of you who like to challenge yourself. Traffic is disabled by default and it's mainly useful for certain wanderer requirements as well. And finally, Versus, in case you want to dominate your friends and prove to them that you are the master of the highway, at least without spending a lot of money on the Wangan Midnight arcades. With all of this said, Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 is quite possibly the best mainline TXR game to date. The amount of details put into this game is staggering, especially coming off the year of 2003. From the wide range of car options, their own unique customizations, even the fact that some wanderer requirements get so out of hand they start requiring you to play with the game's different features and game modes is insane. But of course, unfortunately, the game had its fair share of problems, such as the change in handling, which soured the fans of TXR 2 or 0, and the production issues mostly revolved around the bad or questionable translation, causing a 100% run impossible through legitimate means. And with a career completion time taking around 22 hours on my end, this game will certainly entertain anyone interested in the highway racer subgenre even more so than most recent modern titles, at least until that Nightrunners game comes out.